What if there was Super Smash Bros., but for FPS games? A crossover of epic proportions, except for the FPS genre. Hello and welcome to this first episode, and probably only episode, of games that I would love to see come to light, but I'm not a game designer, so I'm not able to. I got this idea from a thing that Funk made. It's about a FPS game with an all-star cast that I just freaking love. Go check this out.
Since the dawn of time, nothing has yielded more hype and camaraderie than the video game crossovers. Fighting games are notorious for these lineups, and it kills me that the closest FPS equivalent we currently have is Quake Champions.
I freaking love this idea, and I wanted to make this video just to throw my hat in the ring to see how I would design a game like this. So, without further ado, let's do it. Alright, let's get it out of the way. Who am I gonna put in this absolutely packed roster of legends? I organized them into a few categories, so I'll slowly reveal some and explain why I put some in there. If we had an epic crossover shooter, then it wouldn't be one at all without the one and only Master Chief. First-person shooter games on consoles wouldn't exist if it weren't for Halo, and the cultural phenomenon that it was during the time of its first trilogy put gaming as a whole into the mainstream appeal for the first time. Its world was interesting, its guns were literally out of this world, and it was an FPS shooter that was unlike any other in the market at the time. If Master Chief was your dad, Doom Guy would be your granddad. Doom was the first game that did the first-person shooter right, widely considered to be one of the best games of all time, and the one to kickstart the genre in the first place, even spawning a subgenre of games named after itself. There's a certain dance, a rush of adrenaline in its action-packed, gun-juggling gameplay, both in its first and recent appearances. It would be a mistake to not put the granddaddy of FPS games into this.
Titanfall!
BT-7274 online and ready for combat. It is time to complete our mission.
Titanfall 2 was the game not many people expected to be so good, and over the past year or two, the game has kind of gone through a resurgence in popularity. This game was a refreshing deviation from FPS trends when it first released, innovating on how mobility like grappling, wall running, stimming, sliding, double jumping can complement the traditional loop of just sprinting and shooting. It was a game that was ahead of its time. On top of all that, put in an even deeper layer of game with the most epic badass mech combat I've ever seen, and you have a game that is unlike any other. Too bad it had to compete with two of the biggest games in that year, Doom 2016 and Overwatch. If its company stopped sexually harassing its employees, Tracer would be a great pick for this game. Whether you like it or not, Overwatch pushed the boundaries of what a class-based shooter could be. The fact that you had so many distinct, individual characters, each with their own abilities, playstyles, personalities, roles to fill in the team game, defined what Overwatch was and set the hero shooter genre in stone. Almost like a fighting game, no two characters were alike, and each player had their own favorite hero to play. Tracer as the poster child of Overwatch could be an amazing fit, being a great close quarters character with excellent mobility. If only the developers were actually decent human beings, we'd probably just give Tracer's slot to the company who did the speedy close quarters thing first. Speaking of doing some things first,
I am heavy weapons guy, and this
changed my way.
The game that walked so hero shooters could run. I could literally say everything I praised Overwatch for and apply it to Team Fortress 2. Distinct individual characters, first. Abilities, playstyles, personalities, first. All the animated shorts you're so used to seeing when new characters come out, yeah, Team Fortress did it first. But aside from being the first to do all these things, Team Fortress 2 was a cultural catalyst. With the release of the Source engine as a whole, the characters of TF2 were essentially given directly to the players, allowing them to make their own maps, game modes, cosmetics, animations, memes. Its impact was undeniable. As much as I would love to put the entire cast into this crossover, the heavy weapons guy is just a quintessentially Team Fortress character, bringing in his tanky firepower with his minigun, as well as the charisma and boisterous energy of the series into our lineup that so absolutely needs it.
Can I have some more?
With that, we have our big five. Characters, in my opinion, that represent the most out of FPS history. Now I'm going to rapid fire through a list of characters of games that I haven't played that much, but still have an impact on the FPS genre as a whole, as well as a few special left field characters that I think you guys would like. Let's get to it. The Ranger from Quake would be an awesome pick. It was the definitive arena shooter back in the day, and it was sort of the halo of the PC platform when it released. BJ Blazkowicz from Wolfenstein would be another easy pick for this crossover. Doom may have been the game that put id Software on the map, but Wolfenstein was the proof of concept they needed to get the FPS genre on its feet. Gordon Freeman from Half. From what I've read about this game, revolutionary is sort of an understatement for how influential this game was in terms of story-based shooters. Games used to use arbitrary stories just to contextualize the player in a shooting gallery. But now games were trying to copy Half-Life, injecting a larger world into their stories. Something from Call of Duty. You didn't play Call of Duty for its stories, you played it for its multiplayer. As stale as the franchise can be today, the game during its peak was renowned for its boots-on-the-ground multiplayer, zombies mode, and cultural influence on Xbox Live that's too hard to ignore. Imagine if Jinx made it into a first-person shooter crossover before she got a spot in Smash. Oh wait! I'm so sorry. Man, she's just a character that just writes herself, dude. Pow Pow primary, Fishbone secondary. It just makes too much sense. From the titan that is League of Legends, how cool would it be to represent the MOBA in a completely different genre of game, as the perfect character from left field? Boy, Gears of War was the third-person shooter. Games before it just used it as a camera perspective, but Gears was the one that fully incorporated it into its gameplay, having complex cover mechanics as opposed to the verticality you see in traditional first-person shooters. Now that we represent third-person shooters in this game, imagine Marcus sporting the Lancer and Nashor shotgun, having a chainsaw duel against the Doomslayer, exactly like his Sub-Zero. Ah, so cool! And lastly, if we were to represent the landscape that is first-person RPGs, I'd have to put the Dovahkiin from Skyrim into this crossover. What a game to set the bar for open-world first-person RPGs. At the time, the game's scale was huge, and the sheer number of things you could do, the customization of your character, and different combinations of weapons and magic you could have set the standard for what many open-world games take inspiration from. Like, bro, imagine little Skyrim man pushing away Master Chief's 450 kilogram suit of armor with a freaking car. I mean, this is why crossovers are made. And those are my picks for who I'd put in an epic crossover shooter. 12 absolute legends from gaming history. I might have missed one or two, but I feel like this roster captures a good chunk of gaming history. And it doesn't even need to stop there. We can have maps from different games too, like a test lab in Aperture Science, or the dusty dunes of Counter-Strike, maybe a planet in the style of Borderlands, or the retro aesthetic of GoldenEye 007. Not to mention the potential music we can put into these maps. And we have a crossover that is no joke, one of the biggest the gaming industry could ever see. I'm blown away by this, man. Why doesn't this exist? Why? But with all that said, how do I balance a game like this? Before I continue, I have to preface that a game like this is no easy feat. Like, unbelievably difficult. Every game here speaks a different language. Some games move fast, some move slow. Some kill quick, some kill slow. Finding one singular language where a game that moves slow can match up against a game that moves really fast whilst also retaining the elements from the original games is probably the most difficult and important thing to consider when making a game like this. With that said, I feel a good baseline set of physics, speed, and effective ranges would have to be Overwatch's engine. Because it already has to account for all different types of heroes and playstyles, it would be a nice point of reference when creating the physics and overall combat language of a crossover game like this. Heck, Lucio's Waron can already act as a reference for Jack Cooper's. Soldier 76 can act as a baseline for FPS games with sprint and automatic weapons. And they've already made Source, id Tech engine-like movement for games like Team Fortress 2, Doom, and Quake. But how would I balance the characters? Because every game here functions vastly different from each other, we're going to need some sort of standardization, a blueprint if you will. One that can funnel all these games into a central combat language, whilst also being flexible enough to allow for gimmicks and interesting design to better represent their original games. With that, I've created two characters that we can take inspiration from to make other possible champions in this lineup. Starting with Master Chief. Just like Mario for Smash, the Chief anchors down what a Super Shooter Bros character should be. Starting off with primary and secondary weapons, Master Chief would be holding his iconic MA-40 assault rifle and magnum pistol in hand. Being a nice jack-of-all-trades character, his assault rifle would be great close to mid-ranges, while his magnum could be effective towards longer ones. Moving on to a possible tactical ability, what better one would Chief have than a pair of trusty frag grenades? Holding two charges just like his original game, Chief can throw grenades around corners and walls for area denial, while also having a few niche uses like grenade jumping for some extra mobility. If we're putting passives into this game, his would undoubtedly be his energy shield. Being able to regenerate half of his health after not taking damage for a while would make him super tanky and allow him to sustain himself without needing to go to a health pack. And last but definitely not least, an ultimate ability. I felt just using the overshield for multiplayer would just be a bit too basic, so I actually kinda had to dig a little deeper, and this is what I sort of came up with. Ordnance drop. Chief can call in an ordnance drop from orbit and choose between the overshield, active camouflage, the rocket launcher, or the sniper rifle used for a limited amount of time, and are as lethal as they are in the original game. Overall, Master Chief's kit is basic, but still mechanically compelling, representing what a character's kit should generally look like. He has great damage overall, while also being able to adapt to many situations as well. Does he want to play at a distance with his sniper rifle, or push a critical position with his tanky overshield? I think Chief's kit is awesome, but I also love to know how you'd change things if you could. While the Chief sets the mold for characters, I feel Doomslayer should break it. Inspired his original game, he's going to be a fast-paced, high-risk, high-reward character, using dashes to outmaneuver his enemies while having incredible damage output. So, to achieve this, instead of only having 2 weapons, he's going to have 4, each representing an ammo type in his game. The combat shotgun, the heavy cannon, the ballista, and the rocket launcher. Whoa,
Stop right there, criminal scum!
4 weapons? You have like an entire arsenal left. Like, why wouldn't you put it in? I think that the entirety of Doomslayer's arsenal is a little overpowered in comparison to like the rest of the lineup. Ultimately, it'd come down to playtesting, and if there was a solution to add all 8 weapons into the game without having it be broken, I would totally go for that. I'd like to know your suggestions on how I could balance this, so leave them in the comments below. Back to the video. Combined with his tactical dash and fast running speed, he's going to be nimble and pack a punch. To tone it back a bit and balance his already huge arsenal, his passive would be Rip and Tear, where ammo and health would drop from foes the Slayer has killed. What separates good Doomslayers from bad ones is how they manage ammo and use their whole arsenal to their advantage. After all, you do run out of ammo in the original game quite often, which is kind of the game's way of telling you to switch weapons. Last but not least, how could his ultimate not be the BFG? I mean, just rip it out and remake it 1-to-1. The ultimate writes itself. Overall, the Doomslayer will be squishy in the field, but in the right hands of someone who knows how to juggle weapons, he is a force to be reckoned with. With all that said, I feel we have 2 awesome, fully fleshed out characters. One that is foundational, basic, but compelling at the same time, while the other that breaks the mold, has a higher skill ceiling, but rewards those who are able to master it. Of course, this will require a lot of playtesting, but I feel this can set some sort of design philosophy, or some ideas on how we can approach characters if this game were to become a reality. Let me know what you think. And that is how I would make a crossover shooter. Of course, there are many more elements to iron out, like the game's combat language, damage, health, ammo, map design, all that jazz. But I feel a game like this would be more than just a game. It'd be an event. Just like a Smash reveal, people would tune in and give a shit about new characters being added. I mean, that's why crossovers exist. Characters that people love come together into one epic experience. I've had a ton of fun making this video, and even though it took me way too long to make it, it's given me an excuse to re-experience some of these legends that have shaped the FPS landscape. Like, bro, I got to play the Halo trilogy. I played Doom since I last picked it up back in 2021. I tried out TF2, Titanfall when it was on sale, rediscovered my love for Overwatch and all that stuff, and I don't know, it's just given me a sort of retrospective look at how far the FPS games have sort of come. And to know that halfway through the making of this video, Microsoft actually bought Activision Blizzard, a game like this is honestly in the cards of the guys over at Xbox. It's just a matter of when. Mark my words, and I'll see you in the next one. I want to give a big thanks to my friend James at GimGam on Instagram for making the phenomenal thumbnail for the video, as well as RSG for the absolutely stellar Doom Eternal gameplay. Honestly, the Doom segment wouldn't have been as good without your help. I've been working on this for God knows how long, and I'm about to go to university after this is uploaded. Thank you so much for watching this far, and I really hope I can make more videos in the future. Hopefully I'll see you then.